Hello, everyone, and welcome to the recap show for the Handmade Essentials Jam. We're so glad that y'all could join us for this. So the Handmade Essentials Jam, if you're unaware, is a programming jam that we at the Handmade Network did, where the premise was to build essential software completely from scratch. Something that you would use every day, but you're not allowed to use any AI to build it. You gotta try and actually make the thing yourself. And this turned out to be our biggest jam ever. We had 27 complete submissions, which is vastly more than we've ever had. It was an incredible, incredible turnout. And today, we're here to celebrate all of those submissions by interviewing several of the creators, showing off a lot of their projects. I think it's going to be a really good time. For this jam, we had so many submissions. Asaf, I think, will post the link in the chat so that you can go to the jam website and look at all of them. But today we have a pretty wide selection of them that we think are really cool and that we're excited to show you. Among the projects that we're going to be showing today are an RSS reader, a video editor, a diff viewer, and the first project that we're going to start out with is a replacement for the Windows utility character map. And it is called Unimap, and let's watch a demo video before we talk to the creator.
Hello. My name is Taylor Plew. My project is called Unimap. The motivation for this was doing a modern take on Character Map. This is a program that's been in Windows for over 30 years now, and hasn't been updated a lot in that time. It only contains the first Unicode plane, so code points 0 to FFFF only. And in my opinion, the UI is just a little clunky and could do with a refresh. So this is Unimap. You just browse the Unicode blocks like this, and they do go past FFFF. It has all the Unicode planes. There's about 7 that have actual characters in them. And if we go into Osage here, you can view characters in that block. Just click a character to copy it, paste that wherever. Hover over a character to see its Unicode character name, HTML entity, and actual UTF-8 bytes. And some of them do have named HTML entities like and copy there. But the best part about this you just saw is the global search. There's a button up here. There's also key bindings for it. You can search individual characters like ruble, Unicode blocks, Braille, search for Braille. Or if you know the code point beforehand, 1F343 is leaf fluttering in wind, you can just go straight there. And if you notice how fast the searching is, just on every keystroke, I'm instantly getting all the results. And what I believe is the main reason for that speed, if we come over here, I'm generating these binary files for every Unicode block. This is, once again, the Osage alphabet. And these binary files are comprised of a string section containing all the character names for that block, and a header section at the beginning just containing 32-bit addresses into that string section that are mapped to each, indexed by the Unicode code points. So it's a quick O of 1 lookup for each character, and you can imagine looking over these 32-bit addresses one after the other and checking the strings maps really ergonomically to machine code. So, and there's over 40,000 character names in total. So I was fully expecting to have to pull out either SIMD or like multi-threading to achieve that speed, but didn't need to. It was made with DVUI. This is an immediate mode UI widget library, similar to DRIM GUI. It's pretty straightforward. You just place widgets imperatively like this, divui.floating window, divui.box, if divui.button. The code in here runs with the buttons clicked, stuff like that. This would have been a good opportunity for me to learn Odin, which is something I've been meaning to do. But just over the past couple of years, I've grown really comfortable with Zig, and I was confident that I could get this up and running in a week's time. If I was confident in creating GUIs with just C++ and the Win32 API, I would have done that. As much as I love Divui, it is a little too high level for my liking. Stuff like just bugs show up like this dragging thing for this Windows obviously just shouldn't be there. And every time this happens, I just have to dive into Divui internals to figure out what's going on, instead of just implementing a floating window widget from scratch. It is not putting this dragging functionality in the first place. Stuff like that. The nice thing about this idea is because it's so simple, I was able to get the basic functionality done in the week. This search UI was overhauled since then, since the end of the jam. But besides that, in terms of polishing it up, there's a couple of things that could be done. Better icon, better UI. I'm not sure this is like the most helpful way of browsing characters, just block by block like this. If we go back to character map, something I've wanted to implement since the beginning is you can just drag and drop characters onto other windows like this. That's feature parity that I would love to implement in Unimap. It's currently Windows only. Theoretically, it should compile on Mac and Linux, since it is just an SDL backend, and there's no Win32 code being ran as of yet. But the tricky part is just knowing which fonts to load that support the different blocks and don't just show, they call it tofu, is these rectangles, just replacement characters for when a font doesn't support certain characters. So knowing which fonts to load is the tricky part for that. This jam was a lot of fun. I had a great time. I saw Ben tweet about this and was really excited to just jump in this idea. I love that LLMs were not allowed. It was just so refreshing knowing that all these projects were made by humans, and it was fun going and seeing all of them. So I can't wait for the next one. The code is on GitHub, just github.com/TaylorPlew, PLEWE/Unimap. And if you want to grab a copy yourself, try it out, just go to the releases page. Okay, thanks everyone.
All right, and now with me today, I have the creator of Unimap, Taylor Plew, for a quick interview. So thanks for joining me. So it was really nice to see, like, Unimap was really like straight down the middle of exactly the kind of thing we were imagining and hoping that people might create for the Essentials Jam, right? Take some utility that has been around, that's useful, but that is lacking the things that you would want, and build a better version yourself, or just any version yourself. So I'm curious to start off, have you been using Unimap now in your day-to-day?
I have used it a couple times. At work the other day, I was looking for like an arrow symbol, and I was like, I have just the program for that. And it's called Unimap.
How well do you find that the search works? I mean, I know that every glyph has a name of some kind. Well, I guess, first of all, is that true? Is it true that every glyph has some kind of reasonably human-friendly name?
That is not true.
Okay.
It's true for most characters. It's true for most. I've learned a lot about Unicode during making this. Most characters do have names. Some of them, so there's a lot of CJK, Chinese, Japanese, Korean blocks.
Oh, I just realized.
There's
sorry.
a lot.
I just realized that I wasn't even showing the program. So I've got the screen share up now, so you can show things off properly.
Okay.
My
You can see my screen.
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay. So there's a lot of these CJK, Chinese, Japanese, Korean blocks, for instance, and these don't have names. They just kind of, there's so many of them. They're either just named, the block plus their little Unicode code point, or they just don't have a name. So most of the ones that you would actually use have names, but
sure.
Yeah.
So one thing that I was curious about, you obviously have a ton of Unicode in here. What about emoji? What would it take to get those into this program?
That's a good question. I looked a little into how to render the colored emojis. These are the emojis.
Okay.
And there's a font that comes on Windows called Sego Emoji UI, something like that. And that's what this font is. It has like a black and white monochrome version, which is this, and a colored version. I believe there's a rendering protocol to render colored emoji, which I did not look into enough. Luckily, just UI Sego emoji works kind of out of the box with this monochrome. So yeah, again, these are emojis. You can, if I copy one of these and paste it into Notepad, it is,
sure, colored. Okay, so nice. So in the video, you talked a little bit about the tech stack that you used. So Zig and this thing called DVUI or Divui. And,
yep.
The bug that you showed with the window dragging is kind of funny. I was curious what your overall experience was. How often was that a problem for you, and how easy would it be to craft your own UI, either just on your own, I suppose, or using some primitives that Divui gives you?
Yeah. It came up a couple times. One with the search, this dragging thing, which is just annoying. The other time it came up, you kind of saw there on the CJK one. I think Jay has a lot of them. It's trying to render every single one of these buttons in the whole block instead of just showing what's on screen. Devui does have a virtual scroller, an implementation of virtual scrolling. So it's just rendering all these buttons, but it's only rendering the ones on screen, so virtual scrolling. And I couldn't get that working in here for some reason. And I had to just dive into Devui's virtual scroller, and it was annoying kind of having to poke around there. And so how easy would it be? It would be difficult.
Like even if you wanted
the nice
to
thing about
do your own virtual scroller within, I mean, I'm curious, of course, why it doesn't work. But I guess if if it's just a mystery, then I guess it remains a mystery for now. But
it's a mystery for now. Yeah.
Sure.
Devui does exposes the SDL backend pretty well, pretty intuitively. So you definitely could implement your own virtual scroller, for instance.
Sure.
It would just take time and effort, and I didn't in the 1 week I didn't have time to look into that. I did a little bit, but not enough to get it working.
Yeah. I really liked the drag and drop feature. I had that you mentioned in the video as a hopeful upcoming thing. I had no idea that the Windows character map did that. I mean, to be honest, I had forgotten that the Windows character map existed at all. But since the jam, have you looked into what it would take to implement that? Do you have plans to keep updating it and close out those few features that you talked about wanting to implement?
Yeah, I looked at it before the jam. It would take diving into the Win32 API. I don't think it's very complicated to do that. Just a few function calls, registrations, and whatever. But that is kind of next on the to-do list, is that drag and drop, because that's a really nice feature to have, like you said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my workflow for these things is generally to Google the character that I'm interested in and then copy it out of the search results. So,
Same.
I'm already pretty excited to have Unimap as something that I can just download, hopefully on other machines too, if indeed it is cross-platform and stuff. So it's a really wonderful addition to have and something that I'd love to have on all my machines. Overall, I mean, I hope you enjoyed the jam. Is that kind of jam experience something that you want to do again in the future? Do you have more ideas for essential things that you'd like to replace?
Absolutely. The jam was a ton of fun, like I said in the video. It's refreshing to work in an environment where just, I know everyone is writing code by hand. There's no AI involved. It's an even playing field. I don't have any ideas off the top of my head yet for more projects, but I have a huge list of programming ideas in general.
Sure.
Well,
I mean, the next jam that we end up doing may not be Essentials again. In fact, it probably won't be. So I look forward to seeing what you might do for a subsequent jam. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us for this. Everybody check out Unimap if you want a Unicode character map on your machine that isn't just the old crappy Windows one. And thanks so much for joining me, Taylor.
Thanks, Ben.
So the next thing on our agenda here is we're going to look at a project called, well, the name is a little bit hard to pronounce. I believe it is Cacophontonic, and it is a replacement for the Windows sound mixer.
Hello. Welcome to a video about our submission to the Handmade Network Essentials Jam 2026. Our project is called Our project is a replacement for the Windows sound mixer, with a few extra quality of life features and a lot of extra visual spark. To demonstrate Cacophontonic, let's play some music. So, in terms of features, we have what you'd expect from a mixer: volume, mute, solo, and adequate labeling for the processes running on the computer. We also have some extra quality of life features, namely being able to save, load, and reset a custom user profile. This is useful if you have a bunch of audio devices and you want to dial in a sound preset that the software will remember. Each process row has a peak meter that will remain green under good sound levels, yellow when we approach a peak, and red when peaking. The master visualizer unfortunately does not utilize a fast Fourier transform implementation due to time and scope of the jam, in which using an FFT library would go against the spirit of the project. Instead, we set up something that looks about right based on aggregate peak information. The software will react to changes driven by the OS, as well as new sound sources that come and go. The visual flare is nice, but if you are getting a headache from all the moving bars and lights, it's dead easy to turn everything off. If you do have so many processes that they don't fit onto the mixing panel, then a scroll bar will appear, so you can drag up and down on the viewport. The code and architecture of the software is rather simple, with some caveats. It uses a Raylib frontend that handles the immediate mode OpenGL-driven UI, including custom UI elements and all of the fancy visuals. We did try using RayGUI at one point, but it didn't really fit the style of the app, and it was hard to make it work in the way that we wanted it to, so we just made custom UI elements. Another thing about Raylib and using Win32 is that they don't cooperate very well, so we did have to do some hacky workarounds to make sure that Raylib worked with Win32. Speaking of Win32, Raylib sits above the Win32 platform layer, which handles state management, the grouping of sessions, management of profiles, and the composition of the program. Usually we'd look to separate the pure business logic into a different layer to keep the platform layer clean and to keep it relevant just to the Windows layer, but with the time constraints of the jam, this wasn't really a priority. The audio work is handled by a custom con/wasapi base layer that manages sessions, session events, and notifications from the operating system. This reaches into the Win32 core audio component COM objects. For example, we have the iAudio Session Manager enumerating sessions and iSimple Audio Volume controlling them. We also have a couple of custom COM objects to listen out for events, such as new sessions appearing or old ones expiring. Another point worth mentioning is that we're deep into using the fat struct/static allocation approach. Memory is mostly dealt with through the use of predefined arena allocators, bar the COM objects, which I'm sure we'll both have nightmares about years from now. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm now going to pass you over to our jester.
Given the 1-week time constraint, we couldn't do everything that we envisioned. We were able to make something cool, but with more time we definitely wanted to add more features. So here's the thing. Oh wait, no. Here's the thing. As you can see, we wanted to make this a background process so that way you'd be able to hotkey open it like you would normal Windows sound mixer. Unfortunately, Raylib does not allow you to do this, so we would have to swap to something like SDL to make it happen, which would require a huge refactor of everything that we've done up to this point, but it'd be well worth it. Another thing we wanted to do was a Kava-like visualizer. As of right now, we currently have a fake one that's a peak visualizer with some weird math applied to it to make it look different from each other, as you can see. The ontological tautology of Cacophontonic stems from the words cacophony and tonic, making the solution a bad sound. While this program does help with sound management, it doesn't really do anything to change the original streams, so perhaps an EQ or something like this would be in order to make this happen.
Thank you to Gizmobly and our jester for that program. Before I move on to the next thing, I just wanted to mention that that project, well, the people behind that project were the entire reason that we did the Handmade Essentials Jam in the first place. Gizmobly suggested in a Discord conversation, I would totally participate in a Handmade Essentials Jam, and that was immediately like we knew what the next jam topic was going to be. So just wanted to give them a special shout out. So next, we have an interview with Starfreak Clone is his username on Discord. Cameron DeCamera is his name in real life. And he created a program called Gap. So welcome to the show, Cameron.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I guess I could take some time to talk about Gap now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you show us what it looks like?
Okay, so kind of some background on like why I chose Gap. The Handmade Essentials thing was, take something that you would use every day and try to build it from scratch in a week. And like, to me, a text diff application is exactly like fitting that mold for me, because I use text diffs all the time at work. I basically, everything inside my editor, which may talk about later, is all built around diffing. So having a powerful diff utility is extremely essential to me. So that's what led me to Gap. This is a very simple kind of like visualization of textual diffs. So normally what you see with diffs, if I do like git log-p, you can see diffs like this inside of Git, right? You see like pluses and minuses, and like sometimes they're kind of hard to see. And there's a good example of this in Fred itself. And actually, it was another inspiration for me to write Gap itself. So I was looking at this diff, and I was like, okay, this starts to make sense. And then I was looking at these things. I was like, what the heck did I actually add? Like, where's the semantic thing that I need to pay attention to? Especially when you're adding like white space on a line, all git diff is going to tell you is like, oh, this entire line was removed and this entire line was inserted, which doesn't really give you a whole lot of information saying like, oh, maybe you like changed a variable here or changed a value over here, right? So I was like looking at this diff and I was like, I can't see anything. And then I thought about what something like Azure DevOps or GitHub does with their diff rendering, where they have that side-by-side diff, and they basically highlight small chunks to say like, hey, you know, here's the lines that were removed and inserted, but inside of that chunk, there's like the specific thing that you changed. And that's super important for just kind of visualizing how code has been changed over time, or like from one Git commit to the next. So that was a big inspiration for writing Gap. So if we go and check out Gap, I can build it just like this, right? It's super simple. Like you only need a C++ compiler for this. And so like that's it. Like it's literally just done like that. So if I open up Gap, this is all it is for now. But what you can do if you just open it by default is you can kind of take some files here. So if I have like a a.text, you can drag it on here. And if I have a b.text, you can drag it on this side, right? And so now you have a nice little visualization of those two different text files. And like I was mentioning before, you have these inner highlights that show you like the individual chunks that are semantically different inside of those individual pieces that were inserted or removed. And the other thing you can do is like you can swap the diffs around. Like maybe that diff didn't make sense, but this one makes more sense. So you can see like, oh, that one, this diff makes way more sense to me versus this one, which is a little bit weirder. And the other thing you can do is that by default, Gap will do this thing where it wants to diff word by word. And this is actually what the algorithm that GitHub uses is they kind of will say like, oh, here's like a word that was deleted and here's like a word that was inserted. But you can get even finer than that with this toggle here. So you can switch to character-based diff, which shows you like individual inserts of every single character and individual removes of every single character. Sometimes this isn't always helpful because it gives you like way more information versus like this thing. This is like usually a good default. But there's a good example of where this is useful. So if I look at like Gap, this thing. So here's a diff between what Gap's main file is and what Fred's main file is. And there's a reason for that, and I'll get to that in just a second, why they're so similar.
Well, we should maybe mention, I did bury the lead a little bit on what you're known for here. So Cameron is, I believe, by day, an engineer on MSVC at Microsoft. And by all the rest of the time, near as I can tell, he's working on an editor called Fred, which actually I'll have my own thing to talk about related to Fred at the end of the interview. But yeah, so Gap and Fred then are the two big projects I know of from you.
Yeah. And so, and this kind of like leads into Fred too, but you can tell, or like, here's a small example of where the character-based diff is sometimes more useful than the word-based one. So if you look at Fred logo on this side, oh, by the way, you can kind of like move these around. This entire UI is built on my own kind of like immediate mode GUI system. And you can do things like have floating widgets, you have like hot bindable, or you can rebind any of the hotkeys. So for example, if you don't like page up and page down for moving text, you can just like rebind that to, I don't know, like shift dot or something like that and reset it back to the normal thing. And then of course it has this nice about page. But anyway, back to the diffing. So if you notice, I switched to character-based diffing, and you can see the individual like gap was changed versus like Fred was inserted on this side. And so that's a case where the individual insert or the individual character interdiff makes a lot more sense. So that's why it's kind of nice to have that toggle. The other thing you might notice are like these little orange lines here. These indicate regions of text. These little lines indicate regions of text that are trimmed, and that's what we call the context window for the diff. And so you can expand or contract that context window by using this plus or minus up here. So if you want to add like more context, you just keep clicking this and eventually you'll get to the entire file. Or you can lower it all the way down. And once you hit 0 and you go lower than that, it just gives you the entire file. So it's useful if you just want to see everything, or if you want to just focus on the diffs, like you can do that with just a little bit of context. I think by default it's 3, which is what get diff does. So that is the vast majority of the important things with Git, with gap. And here's that diff I showed you at the very beginning, but using gap instead of git diff. And so you can kind of see like, here's the inserts that we made here. There we go. So there's the highlights that we actually care about. Oh yeah, I just changed that thing, right?
That looks so nice. And it's like, what impresses me, well, there's a lot of things that impress me about this. Obviously, there's all the custom UI and all the custom stuff, which I know you've been building up for yourself over a while. But I'm really impressed by how completely it fits into your workflow already after just a week of effort. One technical question that I had, I wasn't able to really tell just from the outside, is Gap doing its own diffing, or is it like relying on Git to provide it with a diff and then it's just viewing it?
Oh, it's its own algorithm. Okay. So I implemented the linear space Myers diff algorithm inside of Gap. So it doesn't rely on anything whatsoever. And that's I think a really powerful piece of it.
Yeah, well, it sure seems like it. And I had a hunch then when you were showing all the different modes of, letter by letter, word by word, that you must be doing this yourself. But when you actually launch it from Git, then is Git just serving up 2 files and then Gap is taking it from there?
Yeah, exactly. So what Git has this thing called diff tool, which it will basically invoke instead of diff to view whatever its temporary files are. So you can even see like up here in the kind of like at the very top, you can see the files, and Git kind of generates a like temporary file in like the Windows temp folder to like diff against the old one. So it's like a base. There's this thing that it calls like the base and then the remote, and it just gives it those 2 things to Gap, and Gap just does its normal thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know how fast it is like on really large files compared to other diff engines or diff viewers?
So we can so a good one actually is the main that I was talking about earlier. So this is like 3,000 lines long, but we can get even bigger, right? So like I have Fred source ed.cpp, and then I have Fred2 source ed.cpp. So this is my like big editor, and this thing is huge, right? Like this is 11,000 lines long. And you can get even bigger than that. But this took a little bit of time to diff, because it's kind of like running the algorithm multiple times inside of each chunk. So when I swap the files, you can see like it computed the diff in 600 milliseconds, but this is debug code, right? Like, like if I compile it for release real quick, so if I do build release, and that's like as easy as it is to just build the release version of Gap. If I diff it now, it's only 131 milliseconds to diff, an 11,000 line file, and it's literally everything. Like it's not doing any incremental. It's not doing any incremental stuff.
And is that including like the ability to switch between the different, like the word by word, the letter by letter? All that's being done right up front?
So that one actually has to be computed on demand. So if I toggle this, it has to recompute the diff, like the inner diffs. But it's still, I mean, it's still pretty fast. Like,
Yeah,
it's
I
not
would say
quite,
so.
yeah, it's not quite frame time, but I mean, it's almost imperceptible. And of course, the context window expansion, that doesn't compute a diff at all. That's just using cached information. So this is basically instantaneous to keep doing that.
Yeah. No, that looks wonderful.
Yeah.
This whole project is just one of those things that makes me immediately sad for the state of tools that we actually put up with on a day-to-day basis, because it's pretty simple. Like, I mean, not to at all to diminish the work that you've done, but it's a simple utility with few features, but they all just seem so instantly intuitive and helpful, right? If I want to just compare two files, like, oh, I can just drop them in. Or I can just swap the order, or I can just increase the lines that I'm seeing, or I can just switch the mode, and I don't have to like quit back out and look up the flags and put the flags in again and run it, you know? And it just makes me really happy to see somebody who, like, to see that you're able to put together something with that number of useful features that slots right into everything that you do on a daily basis. I mean, in just a week. And I feel I should linger a little bit on all the custom UI stuff. So I mentioned Fred before.
Yes.
Cameron is actually going to be demoing Fred at the first ever Handmade Network Expo that we're doing in Vancouver in about a month. Oh, good. He's already got it set up for me. Very good. And because Fred is a really neat project, it is all custom made, custom rendering, and you're seeing a little bit today of the tech that I suppose now is common to both. So I'm very excited to see that full demo, and we'll have the thing, you know, recorded. We won't actually be live streaming the expo or whatever, but we will have a recording of that. So those who are watching the stream but can't join us in Vancouver on June 6th can look forward to a presentation about Fred coming up soon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And just one really quick thing I can show you, that white space thing, you know, when you're adding white space. This is Fred, by the way. Oops. There we go. Okay. All I did was change those things in Fred, right? The diff looks like this. It's the removes and the things. But with Gap, right, you can kind of see, oh, all I did was add a couple of white space. Yeah. That's a super useful thing.
I should ask then, are you intending to integrate any of Gap into Fred in the near future?
Yeah, I fully intend to integrate Gap, because I really want this ability to, like, not only move the panels, but, you know, expand the context window and stuff like that. That's all stuff that should be doable inside of this diff viewer inside of Fred. And this is the tree view, by the way. This is like literally diffing two versions of the same immutable buffer, which go to the Handmade meet, or the first, you know, Handmade Expo, and I'll talk a little bit more about how that works.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Cameron, thank you so much for joining us for this. It was wonderful to have you on. Is there a chance that Gap would be available on other platforms as well?
It's available right now. So there's a GitHub for it. It's open source, so you can see like how I write. It's got two different renderers. It's got a D3D render and an OpenGL renderer, and the latter is for Linux. So it works on Linux and Windows today. It just doesn't work on OS X. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't have the hardware.
Hey, I use Linux for most of my day-to-day work now, and would be very happy to view big Firefox patch diffs in Gap instead of in the terminal. So
yeah,
looking forward to that. Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, thanks again for joining us. It was wonderful to have you, and I look forward to seeing your presentation at the Expo.
Yeah, thank you.
So next we have a lightning round of 3 different demo videos, one right after the other. We have a project called Muze, which is a music recording program. We have a tool called Pencil, which lets you draw on your screen, and a tool called Overseer, which is a new task manager. So let's get right into those 3.
Hello everyone, my name is Luca, I am the author of Muze, and I'm going to showcase my program. This is my program, it's called Muze, and it helps me for all my musical needs. My hobby is playing the piano, and I also like to sometimes compose tiny songs out of made out of what I know about other pieces. So this is what it will help me for. But in general, I want Muse to become something that can help me with my hobby. So I wanted to have more features like to learn sheet music. But for the jam, I had to narrow it down to composing part. So that is writing sheet music from playing the piano. For this, I use MIDI. My piano is connected to my computer, and I can also select an output device. It could be playing back on another MIDI device or on TSF, which is using the tiny sound font library. This is also the only library with STB TrueType. All the software is written from scratch, including the UI. And TSF, it will play the notes back through a synthesizer. You can also, if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, play it on your computer keyboard. This would be like this. You could hear me typing on my keyboard and the notes sounding back. But I will just disable output because my piano has speakers. Alright, I'll showcase what it will look like to use this program. Here I'm press space for recording, and I can start with an accompaniment. I'll just play 4 bars. And voila, this is it. We can trim it, it will remove the silence, make it clearer to see. But as you can see, the notes are not really correctly timed. So what I can do is I can select 2 notes and then say guess BPM, which will guess the BPM from these notes. It approximated at 114, which looks correct enough. But as you can see, they are still not on the beat. So I can select the notes. I can select all the notes and sync them. And as you can see, they are now all on the beat. I haven't played these notes evenly, so I'm going to set their length to 1/8. And also I'm going to play it so we can see how it sounds like. Here we have bar of silence, so I'm just going to trim it again, and now it will narrow it down to the last bar. So now when I play, it should loop correctly. Voila. I can also change the time signature with this slider, which is something that I have added after words. So before this demo, what wasn't working, if I remember correctly, is TSF. I did not implement sound output and also these sliders, and also setting the length and the guess BPM. These are all features that I've added. Trim, round, sync, they are all worked. Rounding is because in this case we can see that these are white notes, so they have a length of 2, but they are not really even, so I could round them, and now they're all 2. So it rounds them to their nearest musical length, which can be useful sometimes. What I plan to achieve in the future is to have multiple panels or maybe tabs, a way to overlay multiple songs, so I can loop this and then play another layer of the song I want to make and have it play at the same time. For now, how I achieve this is just by opening a new instance of the program and then setting the BPM to the same. This where I can show you where you can find this program. You can find it on GitHub. I will put a link under the demos here. These are the demos for the end of the jam. They also include another program I've made, but what we're interested here is Muze.exe. It is inside this editor.zip file. You have the executables for everything. Editor is my code base where I put most of my code, where you can find everything I wrote during the jam. And if you want to have the most up-to-date version, you can go to the Muse branch. Alright, I think this is all that I wanted to show you. Thank you for watching.
Hey people, here's a demo for App Pencil. I have a little recording of Hearthstone game that I had today. Imagine this, you're playing with your buddy, he's asking for your help, how to get a legend in Hearthstone. And he's not that good, and usually, you would have to tell him, okay, use this card, and you name the card by name, put it on the right of another card that you have to know the name for. It's kind of a lot. You would rather to just show the guy the play, right? And you can't show the guy the play, but with Pencil, you can kind of do it. You just, the game's running, he's showing you the demo, and you're like, okay, play this card here, put another card here, it's gonna spawn 2 units, you're gonna have a card in your hand, you're gonna play that card, in between those is gonna have this much damage, you kill this minion, now it's dead, next turn you attack the face. And now you can do it all while the game is actually running. You don't have to have a screenshot or, have him wait for you to do it. It's kind of cool. That's what Pencil can do. Now moving on to the part where I talk about how I made it, how it can be improved, and all other stuff related to the app. So my name's Damien. Last week I worked on this project. I called it Pencil. It was a project I decided to do for the Handmade Essentials Jam. The idea for it and the way it came about, I usually like to just take notes or annotate different things, and I like to draw around those things, not draw an image or a drawing, but more like an illustration of something. So for that, I usually have to take a screenshot, go to something like Paint or Telegram, draw there, discard the screenshot. I decided, okay, why can't I just draw on the screen? So I decided to make that app. Before I started, I had no idea about how it would actually be done or what I should even use. So, but I was recommended to start, just pick something that, I feel like I could be done in a week. Is not that much, and I don't really have to learn half of the new, I don't know, libraries or whatever to use. I got lucky that a couple of days before the jam, I decided to code review Cactus image viewer. They kind of had the same thing going on. He could draw on the image. He had 2 buffers that represent textures. I was like, okay, I'm gonna use textures. So I use textures. I decided to use Raylib because it's hard for me to draw myself and render, so I used Raylib. Ended up having to go around Raylib a lot, update textures that Raylib does not allow me to update the way I want them to be updated and stuff. It's about 1,000 lines of code. I did it in a week. Have to rewrite it a couple of times because I would start moving on to the GPU because CPU sucked or whatever. Again, I didn't know how to do none of that before I started writing it. Let me go into the draw mode. Here I am, this guy. I have a bit of UI kind of stole from Milton. You can hide it, you can move it, you can change the color, you can change the size, you can do this. You have a delete queue, then you can redo and stuff. You can delete the whole thing, you can do this. You can go out of the draw mode and move the windows around. Let me delete this whole thing. I'm out of the draw mode, I'm in the draw mode. I start drawing and stuff. I move out of the draw mode. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, UX kind of sucks. I'd like to have some more features. Last week I've been working on moving on to D3D, which I think I should do so I don't have to rely on Raylib. The platform thing, I can just do it myself. I don't need that much, and I've done it. The rendering part, that's that's hard. Kind of messed me up last week. But yeah, I should move off of it. The thing that I would have to implement to have it be usable and comfortable to use would be, first of all, configurations that you can do. What shortcut do you want to swap between modes? More UI, a color picker, which I had to Google how to do brown color to draw this tree on the right because I don't have a color picker. More UI with text input to input values into the RGB. What shortcut do you want to use? What pencil do you want to use? A visible pencil size or whatever. Have a way to remove all the images and then come back to them without having to delete them. Those type of stuff. It's not that much. Most of it is really rendering, and that's what I would have to redo, and it will take some time because it's a whole new thing, right? But implementing this particular app, it's not that much. Especially now that I kind of did it, it's not that much. Well, thank you for the jam. It was actually nice. I dropped out of college a year ago, and I'm home. I don't really have much to people to compete with, not, to like mess them up or whatever, but just to, compare myself to, and have to like do more to or whatever. But with the jam, I saw all those people kind of do updates and stuff, so that helped. So the jam was nice. Thanks. It was pencil. I drew all that. It looks kind of cool, and for the demo as well. Thanks. Have a good day, people.
Hello, this is Overseer. It's my modern take on Task Manager. Here we're in our Performance tab. Currently it only supports CPU and memory usage. If we head over to the Processes tab, we have at least some decent breakdown of the processes running on my machine. We can see that our high CPU usage is caused by Prime 95. We can open this one. Down here we have a breakdown of all of the threads belonging to the process, and we can open them and see them plotted as well. I don't know how useful that actually is. I just wanted to show how trivial that is to do on modern systems, even at several thousand threads. Of course, because I don't want this actually running and consuming my CPU, I can kill it. I wanted to work on this project because I feel that Task Manager is woefully inadequate. For example, in our memory view here we have commit, which is a very important statistic to system memory usage. We can also sort by commit usage in our Processes tab. In Task Manager, memory is just whatever's in physical RAM. There have been many times I've had a lot of open Chrome tabs open, and some of them will start crashing due to out-of-memory issues, and if I open Task Manager, there's nothing here to indicate that there's a problem. Instead, you would need to open Resource Monitor and get some idea of the commit charge on the system only from here, and figure out what is actually causing the problem. This kind of consolidates that into one place to give an idea. Also, Task Manager is just painfully unresponsive, and which is especially egregious for how few features it provides. So Overseer obviously does a much better job. It is an immediate mode UI through Dear IM GUI, uses DirectX 11 in the backend. My plots are done through ImPlot, which is a plotting library built for IM GUI. I also ended up deep into some rabbit holes researching Windows internal stuff from reverse engineering efforts to understand the kernel interfaces used to get all of my data. It was a great learning project, and I had a great time working on this. If I continue work on it, I would definitely re-architect it and replace the UI libraries to eliminate some of the constraints on my development that they cause. The UI needs to be cleaned up, and a lot of features are needed to give insight into more aspects of the system, such as disk, network, or GPU, like Task Manager does, or even anything else that a user might consider a resource such as audio. It would be kind of cool, I think, to see a history similar to CPU of stuff that is playing sound. There should also be good quality of life features like filtering of the processes, like a text box up here or something, or grouping them into apps, kind of like Task Manager does, or even being able to look back in history, either here or like in the system at large, to say, for example, some spike in CPU. Say I wanted to figure out what happened here, it'd be nice if I could like click it and get a snapshot of what the system looked like at the time. With the jam over, I'm seriously considering continuing work on this project, especially if there's demand for such a tool outside of myself. Thank you for watching.
All right, and I am now here with the creator of that project called Overseer. His name is Hiram Hammond, And yeah, welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you for having me.
So it was really nice to see somebody take on task manager things because, well, first of all, I didn't even quite appreciate how lacking the Windows Task Manager was. Like I've felt some limitations before, when I've been looking deeper into memory and that kind of thing on the system. I did not realize it was as slow as it was. That was funny. So yeah, like what kinds of things do you really find yourself getting hung up by on a regular basis?
Yeah, so one was, like I mentioned, the lack of any visualization of the commit charge in the system, which I kind of get it from a normie kind of standpoint. They think of memory as just the RAM stick. They don't really have an idea of the virtual memory system that actually exists within the computer and how that's managed.
Yeah.
But when an operating system like Windows is failing to allocate memory, it's because the commit charge is too high. It cannot commit any more memory. It's not because there's no more RAM available in the RAM stick.
Yeah, and that's something that I've personally looked into for work reasons, and I've done sampling of experiments of different things you can do with memory and where that shows up on metrics. It is, I mean, I don't think hardly anybody knows that Windows has some kind of global memory limit, and yet I agree. I think it's one of the most important things that they could be showing you, especially because it does manifest directly in these like out of memory errors.
And like you said, you didn't fully appreciate just how limited Task Manager was. I didn't appreciate that at all either until I started trying to rebuild it, and I was just like, wait, why is it so bad? There really just isn't a reason for it that I can think of.
I mean, I really liked that, not only are you doing the kinds of things that you see in some other Windows utilities, like the name escapes me, the one that's from Power Toys or sys internals, whatever it is. There's some kind of more granular task manager type of thing that basically shows you a table. But I love that you have graphs of these things too, right? You manage to bring in some of the user experience that people like from this, being able to see not just the numbers for how some of these stats are broken down, but also the relative graphs. Here's how much is commit, here's how much is reserved. And I was curious, well, first of all, how difficult was it really to get all of the like info per thread and that kind of thing? Because that's something I hadn't even really thought about, but it's all there for you.
So info per thread is actually trivial, it turns out. Here, I'll show on my screen.
Yep, let me switch to that.
So I was dealing with some APIs. I'm finding this through reverse engineering efforts. And when I query for the system's process information, the way you do it is you go through an API called NT query system information. And it is like a workhorse for a lot of stuff. To get process information, which is any of their CPU stuff, when I get that, I actually get it by providing a buffer to that API, and I just retry the API until it succeeds because my buffer is big enough. So I just grow the buffer until it works. And it populates that buffer with a linked list where there's this offset that's provided to point to the next thing. There's a linked list populated into that buffer of all of the processes on the system. And the second element is number of threads. And this tells how large a flexible array member of threads will be. So they're included.
So they're just already there, but other tools aren't really breaking it down by that?
Yeah. So Task Manager, when it queries all of the processor stats, has the threads. They're in that buffer.
Well, it's remarkable then that we don't see more of that, including like even just when you view, there's the Windows Task Manager, obviously. There's also like the Task Manager within the browser. There's the Task Manager. Like there's all kinds of tools that'll show you this stuff. And yet I think that yours is the first I've seen that bothered to just kind of by default break things down by thread.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It kind of depends what you're doing, how useful this would be. If if I were to like really work on this, I'd make it like a feature you could toggle on for a process probably, because this is something a developer would be interested in more than like a user. But one thing I realized is it's easy to do. And so at the very least, I could show the enormous scope of features that could be provided very cheaply.
Well, and speaking of features that could be added, there's already several people in the chat who are suggesting other things that could be added. And you mentioned one that I think would be very neat, which is the use of audio and other sort of system APIs. And I can imagine so many things you could add to this, but I'm curious if you have, what your maybe top 3 would be for things that you would want to see in Overseer.
So yeah, I see Cameron's chat with loaded DLLs. That was one that I actually was going to attempt. This was like 2 coding projects that I was building side by side, one to like test with the APIs I needed, and one that was the actual Overseer project. And I did load all of the modules, like just a list of all of the modules for each process. And one cool thing about that is when you get the modules, the API provides their address range where they're loaded. Also, thread information provides each thread's start address. So I could look up which module a thread is started in, which would be useful because like I'm looking at Overseer's threads right now. One of these is the main thread and one is a polling thread that I created that just every second on a tick gets the updated system information. I have no idea what the rest of these are. They're just like,
sure,
because I'm going through a DRIM GUI for UI and I'm doing D3D 11 stuff. Threads got spawned and all of that I have no idea what any of that is, why it's there.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it would be really nice to see some kind of additional breakdown there, because certainly most tools I ever use just throw a thread ID at me, and yeah, it's up to me to log it in any place where I care about it or something,
Yeah. So yeah, that's one of them. Like loaded DLLs, handles is also a big one. I was thinking of even trying to figure out all of the files that are open in the system, either for a process or across the entire system, and so you could figure it out. Like
on Windows especially, that would be very welcome, given how many times we've all encountered the cannot delete this file because it's in use by another process dialogue.
Yeah, everyone's had that experience, and I don't know how expensive it would be. It might require going through some event tracing for Windows API, which sounds absolutely miserable to have to do.
Well, Casey has said publicly that it is like the worst designed API ever or something.
Yeah, I actually, in my little like test project where I did, where I was just like experimenting with stuff, I did use it for some stuff, specifically hard faults, but I found a better way. Like in my processes tab, I do list like number of hard faults that each process is going through.
Yeah,
I was originally looking at getting that information through the ETW API, but it's so bad, just so bad.
Well, someday perhaps it'd be nice to see that stuff. But overall, I really like how this project turned out. It is, simple but effective, and I think that I will be trying it out next time I have to deal with some confusing memory situations or want to get deeper into some of these things. And I would love to see what additional things you choose to add in the future, because I think we are weirdly lacking for useful but detailed task managers.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we've just accepted that our systems are either highly limited or even hostile to us.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to put a lot more control into users' hands.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to go on to another couple demo videos now. So 2 more for you to watch. The first, let me make sure I have this right. The first is a unique video editor called Fillet, and the other is an RSS reader called Berliner.
Hello, my name's Ian, and I go by the name Smilex on the Discord. The name I went with for this project, for this jam, is Fillet. Discord has a 10 megabyte limit on uploads for free users, so I wanted to make a program that would let them cut down any video to 10 megabytes in size. During the jam, I managed to make a subset of what I targeted, but I'm proud that I actually made something useful. The program would let you open a video file and then play to the point where you want to start the cut. It would then cut about 10 megabytes of file size for you. After the jam, I tried a different approach. I tried to make the UI show you where would the video start and where was the estimated end, which led me to the realization that this was also the wrong approach. What I want to do in the future is just show the user a timeline and then let them pick out the section they want with an indication of what would 10 megabytes look like. During the jam, I encountered some issues, the big one being encoding. Trying to work with the FFmpeg API was one thing, but I also learned that I hadn't thought about an issue. Do I target a video length and then optimize the quality of this video stream to fit that length? Or do I show the user a guess at which length the video would end? Then I can target a predictable video quality. While even with the first approach I would make sure to have a minimum acceptable quality, I think the second approach is more user-friendly. Decoding with FFmpeg's C API was easy enough to understand, and going forward one frame at a time was easy to do fast, but going back in time I had to seek and I struggled a bit. And so I realized what I always realize over and over again, that I cannot predict well what I want from something before I actually implement it. I have to iterate. For my programming language I just went with C++ in a very casey style. And for rendering and windowing and platform specific stuff, I just went with STL. And then, as previously mentioned, I used FFmpeg's C API for video file parsing. One implementation detail is that I work in 1080p for rendering and then just scale to fit the window size. The reason I mention this is because it seems like a good corner to cut when working in jam time. Unless I'm wrong, the entire software was scaled to different window sizes and you can skip the OS scale factor. It just seems like a very video game solution, but I think it's worth it for a jam. And that's what gave me the idea to have the UI use Game Boy colors. And I think it's a fun thing to do more interesting skins than just the corporate stuff. Besides getting all the video stuff perfect, I'd also want to have target profiles. Platforms that people could target, like Discord's 10 megabyte limit or Trello's limit. I also wish that I could have implemented a Windows Movie Maker look. And some of you might remember Unimap, which had skins for visual flair. I hope to implement something like that just to bring it back as a thing. I haven't released Fillet yet, but I want to bring up a URL for where it will land. I intend to open source this, and I looked up that FFmpeg actually works with Mscripten, so I was thinking this could actually run in the browser. And so I want to thank the Handmade team for organizing this jam, and I want to thank them for the opportunity to show this project. And thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Felix, and for the Handmade Essentials Jam, I wrote Berliner, a simple and snappy RSS feed reader for Windows. Subscribing to RSS feeds lets you keep track of website updates in a single app, skipping algorithms, newsletters, and notifications. Berliner shows your subscriptions on the left with their respective unread counts. On the right, you see articles from the selected feed. Each item has a title and date, as well as an unread marker you can click to toggle read state. Clicking a selected item, or double-clicking another item, opens it in the browser and marks it read. I built Berliner in C, with my own standard library, which is in the public domain on GitHub. Using my build system's metaprogramming features, I'm embedding the Chicago bitmap font directly into the executable. RSS feeds are distributed in the XML format, so I needed a parser. I'd written an XML parser last year as a single header library, and it was complete enough for this prototype. I should say that even though all feeds are XML, there are actually two competing standards people refer to when they say RSS. RSS itself and Atom. They're both used, so you can't quite get away with only supporting one. In practice, this means checking synonymous XML field names, and knowing which fields can be optional. Berliner currently parses each item, or entry, getting the title, date, and link for each. But even seemingly standard fields can have conflicting conventions. The URL can be an href attribute of a self-closing link tag, or nested as text between opening and closing link tags. And there seems to be no agreed-upon date format, so for now, I showed the date string as is, and order items as they're passed in the XML file. In practice, it's always newest to oldest anyway. I want to use Berliner myself, and it needs some work before that can happen. First of all, The custom UI system needs work, and I'll replace the software renderer with proper graphics. This might look cool, but I need to display Unicode characters, not show question mark boxes instead. You should also be able to group and rearrange feeds, not to mention adding and removing them from the UI, instead of pasting links into the source code or a config file. I started building it because I wanted a simple RSS reader for Windows. I hope that soon others can get some use out of it as well. Thanks to Ben and the Handmade Network for yet another brilliant jam.
All right, thank you so much to both. Let me again make sure that I get the names right. Thank you so much to Smilex and Felix for those two wonderful projects. And now to close out our show, we have one more interview with Hugo, who created a project for the Jam called Digital Paper. And this project really needs to be demoed to be understood. So Hugo, why don't you take it for a spin and show us what this project is?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. Can you see my screen right now? Is that showing?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay. So actually, I'll give some background first. So Digital Paper is a word processor with a kind of unconventional design philosophy. So a lot of the time when I'm writing, I find that I waste a lot of time just like rewording a sentence again and again. And like, if I were to just be writing on a piece of paper, I have to just commit to what I've written and continue writing. But I'm like, okay, why do I have to use paper to like have the benefits of that, I guess. So I made a text editor that it tries to recreate the limitations of writing on paper. And it's a little bit silly, but I think it's fun. So let's try typing some text. All right, so that's fine. But say I wanted to go change something. If I go back and delete this word, the text isn't reflowing. It's as if I had just erased like something I'd written with pencil. Yeah, that's fine. And maybe a better example would be if I wanted to reword something like quick brown fox jumped over. So now you see there's not really enough space for me to write it. So I can go in and change the text spacing between characters. Jumped over the lazy dog. So now you can see the text is just a bit skinnier and it fits in. So yeah, it's a bit of a silly idea, but the idea is if you really limit like what the user can do to edit what they've written, then maybe they'll think a bit more clearly and try to present their ideas in a bit more of a straightforward way.
Well, yeah. So I was just laughing out loud when I watched your first demo video, just because it's so unusual to see the text not reflow. It's something that everybody just intuitively expects at this point, because that's just what every program has been doing forever. It is funny to me that you consider this such a like important limitation, but have you been using this at all in your day-to-day since the Jam? Have you been using this for notes and for brainstorming?
I mean, not really. I think I'd like to flesh out the program a bit more. It's missing some pretty major features right now. Like you're limited to only one page, which is kind of an issue. So I'd like to add a few more features, and then I'd probably use it a bit more. Really, it's an experiment though. Like yeah. I imagine for most things I write, I'm going to be writing in a normal text editor, like a normal person. But it's something to explore, yeah. I guess.
Now I see there is a save button. What format would this save as?
Oh yeah, so it saves as a PNG, which is kind of funny. So I'll call this. Oh, sorry, you can't see the save window. There's a native save window popping up, but demo.png. So you can see it's got a file name up here, and then I can open another document. It's another PNG. So I'm sort of keeping track of the ideas I want to add in the future.
I mean, I suppose, right? Like why?
Yeah.
It's very funny to me to imagine opening up an image in a text editor, but why not? So yeah. I am curious overall. You do seem to have a certain amount of like automatic text logic, because like I saw earlier you like clicked on some text that you had before. Is that snapping the cursor to any particular point in the text? When you backspace, how much does it know to backspace by, right? Like there's, because it's not monospace, it's all proportional, and yet it seems to be doing like, I can't tell how much it's doing.
Yeah, okay, so let me, I'll have to make a new document to demo that, because it doesn't save the cursor positions in between text. So testing. So I have this document we're looking at here. This like blank white page is just a bitmap basically, and I have typed onto the bitmap. Now the way I did the cursor, so I'm pressing the arrow keys and I can just like jump in between the characters like you would normally.
Mm-hmm.
Every character you type, it basically is just, it has this big like linked list of like where all the cursors should be. So like if I add some text at the end here, it's keeping track of all these intermediate cursor positions, and then I can just sort of scroll through that list. And then if I go and like backspace a word, it's now just like deleted all those intermediate cursors, and it's sort of merged all that white space together as well.
Sure, but you can still jump over it, which I find funny. So because it's a big list, I suppose. So I mean, is there undo?
There's no undo,
but no redo
there is,
either, I suppose.
Well, there's backspace.
Yeah.
So I guess by erasing, so each cursor position, it's keeping track of it, like it knows the bounding box of the character next to it. So when I'm backspacing, it knows to just like sort of draw a white rectangle over that D, and you can see there's like it erases a bit too much. Like I kind of destroyed that A.
It's right a little hard to see on the stream, but I. Don't worry about it. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
I think I might have seen that in some of the videos you posted on the Jam website too. So, the chat is lighting up with all kinds of very good ideas, which I feel we should maybe lightning round here, and you can just say how much you would be interested in adding this. You could make the text progressively smaller as you go further down the page, making the limit never cross to another page.
That's a great idea. So the issue which I need to solve is there's a kind of limit to the text spacing. Like this is maybe the limit right now of how skinny you can get. If I do like 0.3, you start to get like aliasing basically. Like you can't read it at all. You're just missing entire lines of pixels. So I'm not really sure what the solution is for that. But I mean, obviously, if you're shrinking the text infinitely, then there's a threshold where you can't read it.
You've potentially got another whole dimension of text that you can scale by. So I think you've got some huge possibilities in the y-axis as well.
Yeah, you're right.
Here's another one. Check the last file save timestamp versus current load time to determine how many coffee stains to add to the paper.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can do that.
I mean, you're just doing bitmaps. I think the possibilities are endless here as far as aging. How many limitations do you want to bring in? I think there's a lot of options.
Another idea I've had, I want to add like templates. Like, if you, I don't know, go to your grandparents' house and they have some like notepad that has their names on it or something. I could have like, oh, this is like, Hugo from the library of Hugo Bird or whatever.
You've got stationery.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Felix asks if you can occasionally jam the cursor. So, because it'd be great to bring your digital paper in for repair every so often.
Yeah. No, I can charge a fee for that.
This is oh my goodness. The ideas are still flowing. Asaf suggests that if you delete the same spot too many times, it rubs a hole in the paper. I have an only slightly more serious question, which is PDF support.
Yeah, I think someday I would love to do that.
Because weirdly, I could see that kind of working.
Yeah, I guess so. And I could even like save all the cursor positions into the PDF and like have highlighting work maybe.
I think possibly. I don't actually know how that works, but it seems like it might actually be possible.
Yeah, I was thinking like there could be some way at least of like embedding. Well, so at the very least, I want to embed the like like the metadata of like where the cursor should go in between all the characters, like embed that in the PNG metadata. So like if I open up, let's go not save. If I open up this document, you can see I was like crossing things out as I was getting features done. But I can't go and click in between any of the characters right now because it just lost all that information when I saved.
Right.
So I want to embed that in the metadata, but also like I could probably just embed the contents of all the text in the metadata somehow so that it would be searchable by some tool. Like I think that could be useful.
Yeah, I could actually see that working. Like weirdly, I think there are quite a few possibilities for where you could take this. I gotta just say, one of the reasons I love doing these jams is that sometimes people come along with oddball ideas that wouldn't usually make it that far in some kind of brainstorming, or not the kind of thing that people would feel like committing years of their lives to. But at the same time, I think there's genuinely some very fun, very interesting ideas that come out of this. And so I really appreciated your submission just for taking, one of the most creative looks at an essential program of anything that was submitted to the jam.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it.
This is really wonderful. I appreciate it. I believe that Asaf linked the project in the chat, but is it available for people to download yet, or?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we'll eagerly await an official release then of Digital Paper someday.
Yeah. Sometime soon.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and for participating in the jam. It was wonderful to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
And with that, we've reached the end of our recap show. I want to, again, just give a huge hand to all of the people who submitted projects to this jam. Like I said before, it's the biggest turnout we've ever had for a jam by far. Some of our most well-attended jams in the past have had maybe around 10 submissions or something like that, 10 complete submissions. And we tripled that, potentially more depending on how you count up the submissions this year. It genuinely was just incredible to see. And, before we go, I did want to just muse about that a little bit because we've been running jams since 2020 now. The very first jam that we did was a Lisp jam back during the pandemic. And we've been running them ever since. We've been running the Wheel Reinvention Jam, the Visibility Jam, the X-Ray Jam. And we always love all the submissions that people submit for these jams. But interest had been, it can be up and down. There are some times when it seems like there isn't as much interest in these things in the community. And so we were just blown away then when this Essentials topic took off the way that it did. And overall, the software industry is in a weird place right now. I don't want to dwell on it a ton right now, but certainly AI is really changing the way that people work. A lot of major software is, slower and worse to use than ever. Things are moving in a very sloppy direction for a variety of reasons. And doing things like this always just makes me very happy to see that people in the handmade community still, just no matter what else is going on, just love making software. And love making software that they will use, and software where they understand it and where they feel good about its creation, where they take pride in their work, even when it's a small little demo, a small prototype, something that you've only put together in a week, right? It may not be polished enough to ship all the time, although I would really love if some of these projects continued and we were able to develop them into real projects that people could actually purchase, download on their computers, that we could really encourage people to use, that we could potentially distribute, right? I would love to have a Handmade Essentials pack of software that we could put out there for people. I would love if some of the projects move in that direction over time. But even if that's not the case, I'm just very happy to be part of a community of programmers that actually enjoys and cares about programming the way that they do. So thanks again to everybody who participated. It was so wonderful. A couple things before we go. I mentioned earlier while I was interviewing Cameron, but on June 6th in Vancouver, BC, we are hosting the first ever Handmade Network Expo. This is an in-person small event where we've invited several people from the community and around the community to come demo software and for people to be able to interact with them. We've got Anton Mikhailov, Nick Barker, Cameron, who you met on this stream, Gabriel DeCicci, Jimmy, oh no, I didn't pronounce the last name. Jimmy Lefebvre. Sorry, Jimmy. Sorry, Kiba. Leto and Michael Labe and Phil Homan, all of whom have some amazing software to demo. And the event is now sold out. If you don't have a ticket, I'm sorry, but we will be recording all of the presentations so that you'll have something to watch later. And fingers crossed, if the event goes well, we'd love to do more of these things in future years. So just stay tuned for that. The other thing is that we will be running another jam later this year. The dates are not yet announced, but if you go to handmade.network and go to news, you can find a box where you can sign up for our email newsletter. And I do encourage everybody to go sign up for that, because we'll send out monthly or roughly monthly news posts. And that's where you'll make sure to, if you sign up for that, then you can make sure to hear about the jam announcement whenever we make it. We're hoping to get that planned out in just the next couple months, although the expo's taking up some of our time, so no promises on exactly when. But stay tuned to that newsletter for more of what's coming up. And with that, I think that's our show. Thanks again for joining us. You can find all of the projects at handmade.network/jam. I think that link redirects to the correct place. Asaf can also link the proper jam page in the chat. And if you're watching this on YouTube later, then we'll have a link in the description to all the submissions. So please go check them out. See all the wonderful other projects that people submitted that we didn't have a chance to highlight here. We can only do so much in an hour and a half show or whatever this ended up being. So please go check that out. Join us for the next jam. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.